"Don't get out of here. Trust me," shouted the taxi driver at me as the red and blue lights illuminated his sweaty face. And I, trembling like a leaf, not understanding absolutely anything, could only think, how did I get here? How did I go from being a normal woman with a normal life to being about to be arrested for something I didn't even know existed? This is my story. The story of how I discovered that the man I shared 7 years of my life with was a complete stranger, and of how, when all seemed lost, I found the strength to destroy him in the same way he tried to destroy me. My name is Valentina. I am 34 years old, although after everything I've lived through, I feel like I'm twice that. I grew up in a middle-class family in a coastal city, one of those where everyone knows each other and gossip travels faster than the wind. My father was an accountant, and my mother a primary school teacher. We were a normal family, without great luxuries, but without major hardships. My parents taught me the value of honest work, of earning things through effort, of never taking shortcuts. What an irony that I ended up married to someone who lived exactly the opposite. I met Rodrigo when I was 26 years old. I worked as an administrative assistant at an import company, and he arrived one day as the new logistics manager. He was handsome, I can't deny that. Tall, with those green eyes that seemed to change color with the light, a smile that could melt ice, and a smooth talk that I should have recognized as the first warning sign. But when you're 26, and a man like that looks at you as if you were the only woman in the world, you don't think about warning signs. You think about wedding dresses and names for your future children. "You're different from all the women I've met," he told me the first time he invited me to dinner. "There's something about you. Something authentic. You don't pretend to be someone you're not." And I believed him. I believed him because I wanted to believe it. Because after years of failed relationships and disastrous dates, someone had finally appeared who seemed to truly see me. The first months were a dream. Rodrigo was attentive, affectionate, thoughtful. He brought me flowers at work, surprised me with romantic dinners, introduced me to his family as the woman of his life. His mother, Doña Carmen, welcomed me with open arms. His father, Don Eduardo, told me he had never seen his son so happy. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. We got married a year later, in an intimate but beautiful wedding in a garden by the sea. I remember the sound of the waves mixing with the music, the smell of salt and jasmine, the feeling of his hand holding mine as we said our vows. That day I thought I had found my happy ending. I didn't know I was just beginning my nightmare. The first 2 years of marriage were good. Not perfect, because no marriage is, but good. Rodrigo traveled a lot for work, which bothered me at first, but he always explained that it was necessary for his career. "I'm building something big, my love," he would tell me every time he packed his suitcase. "All of this is for us, for our future." And I believed him. I always believed him. What I didn't know was that those business trips weren't always what they seemed. What I didn't know was that while I waited for him at home, preparing his favorite dinner and counting the days until his return, he was building a parallel life I had no idea about. The first sign came on our 3rd anniversary. Rodrigo had promised me a special dinner, but at the last minute, he canceled because of a work emergency. I was devastated. I had bought a new dress, booked his favorite restaurant, planned to surprise him with the news that I was finally ready to have children. That night, I cried myself to sleep. The next day, when I checked his jacket to take it to the dry cleaner, I found a receipt from a luxury hotel in the city. A hotel where his work emergency had supposedly taken place. "Honey, that was for a meeting with clients," he explained when I asked. Without flinching, "You know how these things are. Sometimes you have to impress them." I believed him. Again. But something changed inside me that day. A tiny seed of doubt that planted itself in my heart, and over time grew into something I couldn't ignore. The 4th year of marriage was when things started to fall apart, though I still didn't know it then. Rodrigo changed. He became more distant, more irritable. He spent hours locked in his office talking on the phone in a low voice. He changed the subject whenever I asked about work. And the money started disappearing. Why was the card declined at the supermarket? I asked him one day, mortified after going through the embarrassment of my life in front of the cashier. "Must be a bank error. I'll take care of it," he replied dismissively. But it wasn't an error. I knew because I started checking the bank statements secretly, and what I found chilled my blood. Huge cash withdrawals, transfers to accounts I didn't recognize, expenses at luxury stores, jewelers, expensive restaurants, but none of that came to our house. None of that was for me. "You're paranoid," he told me, when I finally dared to confront him. "Those are company accounts. Representation expenses. Are you going to distrust me now?" He made me feel crazy. He made me feel like I was the problem, that my suspicions were a product of my insecurity, of my trust issues. He manipulated me so well that I ended up apologizing to him. That was his pattern for years, lying, manipulating, making me doubt my own sanity. Gaslighting, it's called. I learned it much later, when it was too late. The 5th year of marriage brought Diana. Diana was Rodrigo's new assistant, 24 years old, blonde, with a body that seemed sculpted and a smile that showed too many teeth. I met her at the company's New Year's party, and something about the way she looked at my husband turned my stomach. "She's just a kid," Rodrigo said, laughing, when I mentioned my discomfort. "Besides, she's excellent at her job. Don't be jealous." Jealous? That word haunted me for months. Every time I mentioned Diana, every time I asked why he was so late, every time I noticed a different perfume on his clothes, I was the jealous one, the crazy one, the insecure one, until I stopped being it. It was a Tuesday night when everything exploded. Rodrigo was on a business trip in another city, but his personal phone had been left at home, forgotten on the nightstand. When it started ringing insistently at 11 at night, I picked it up without thinking. It was a message from Diana. "I miss you so much, my love. Can't wait for you to come back. The baby and I need you. Baby." My world stopped. I read the message once, twice, 3 times. My hands were shaking so much, I almost dropped the phone. Baby. Diana was pregnant, with my husband's child. What followed was a descent into hell. I checked the entire phone, every message, every photo, every video, and what I found was worse than I could ever have imagined. It wasn't just an affair. It was a relationship of over 2 years. Trips together, expensive gifts, promises of eternal love. Rodrigo had told her he was going to divorce me, that I was a mistake from the past, that she was his true love. And the baby was 4 months along. My husband was going to be a father, and I didn't even know it. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the living room sofa, phone in hand, staring into nothingness while my marriage disintegrated before my eyes. Everything I had built, everything I had sacrificed, everything I had dreamed of was a lie. But the worst part, what really destroyed me, wasn't the infidelity. It was what I discovered later. When Rodrigo returned from his business trip, 2 days later, I was no longer the same woman he had left. I confronted him. As soon as he walked through the door, I showed him the messages, the photos, everything. I expected him to deny it, to defend himself, to try to lie to me once more. But what he did was worse. He laughed. "And what are you going to do?" he asked me with a smile I had never seen on him before. A cold, calculating smile, completely devoid of the warmth I thought I knew. "Divorce me? Go ahead. You have nothing, Valentina. Everything is in my name. The house, the cars, the accounts. If you leave me, you walk away empty-handed." I froze. He was right. For years, Rodrigo had handled all the finances. I trusted him blindly, signed whatever he asked without reading it. Let him take care of everything because it was his area of expertise. I had been a fool. Besides, he continued, pouring himself a whiskey, as if we were talking about the weather, "if you try anything, I have enough information to destroy you. Do you think those documents you signed were innocent? You're involved in things you don't even know about, my love." The tone in which he said "my love" made me nauseous. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Don't worry about that now," he replied, finishing his whiskey. "Just remember that if you open your mouth, we both go down. And believe me, you have much more to lose than I do." That night, I slept in the guest room, but I didn't really sleep. I stayed awake, trying to understand what kind of trap the man I had sworn to love until death had gotten me into. What I didn't know was that the trap was about to close on me. The following weeks were torture. Rodrigo acted as if nothing had happened, as if our conversation had never existed. He came and went, spoke on the phone in secret, disappeared for hours, and I started to investigate. I secretly hired a private investigator, an older man with a face that looked like it had seen too much, who was recommended to me by a coworker when I told her my situation. "Ma'am, what you're asking me to investigate isn't just infidelity," he told me after 2 weeks of investigation, looking at me with a mix of pity and concern. "Your husband is involved in very shady business, money laundering to be exact." My world came crashing down. The investigator explained everything. Rodrigo's company was a front. The business trips were to move money of illegal origin through different accounts and countries, and the documents I had signed over the years made me an accomplice. "You appear as a partner in several of these shell companies," he said, showing me papers I recognized having signed without reading. "Your husband used you as a front. If this comes to light, you go to jail with him." I felt like I couldn't breathe. Everything made sense now. The mysterious accounts, the constant travel, his warning that we would both fall. It wasn't an empty threat. It was reality. I was trapped. I spent entire nights without sleeping, trying to find a way out. I couldn't go to the police because it would incriminate myself. I couldn't divorce him because I had no resources or way to prove my innocence. I couldn't run away because where would I go? I was completely alone, or so I thought. It was my younger sister, Lucia, who saved my life. She had always distrusted Rodrigo from day one. "There's something about him I don't like," she constantly told me, and I ignored her because I was too in love to see. When I finally told her everything, crying in her kitchen while her children slept, she didn't judge me. She didn't say "I told you so." She just hugged me and whispered, "We're going to get you out of this, together." Lucia knew a lawyer who specialized in fraud cases, a brilliant man who had helped other women in similar situations. His name was Fernando, and when I told him my story, his eyes lit up with something I recognized immediately: anger. "Your husband made a serious mistake," he told me, after reviewing all the documents the investigator had gathered. "He used you, yes, but precisely because of that, you are his weak point. If you cooperate with the authorities and prove you were a victim, you can not only avoid charges, you can sink him." For the first time in months, I felt something resembling hope. But Fernando warned me the process would be long, dangerous, and would require me to keep acting as if nothing was wrong while we gathered enough evidence to build a solid case. "You need to become the best actress of your life," he said. "Rodrigo cannot suspect anything. If he finds out you're cooperating with us, I don't know what he'd be capable of." He was right. I didn't know either. And that terrified me. The next 6 months were the most difficult of my life. Every day was an act, smiling at Rodrigo when all I wanted to do was vomit, pretending everything was fine while secretly recording conversations, acting like the dumb, submissive wife while collecting documents that would sink him. Diana gave birth during that time, a boy. Rodrigo was present at the birth, obviously, although he told me it was an important conference. I didn't even bother confronting his lies anymore. Each one was another piece of the puzzle I was building against him. Fernando and the investigator worked tirelessly. They discovered Rodrigo was connected to a money laundering network operating in several countries. The money came from drug trafficking, mainly, but also tax evasion by wealthy businessmen who preferred not to declare their fortunes. "This is much bigger than we thought," Fernando told me one day, his face serious. "The authorities are very interested, but they need more. They need you to catch him in the act." And that's how the plan was born. Rodrigo had a business trip scheduled for the end of August. According to my investigations, that trip involved an important money transfer, more than $2 million that needed to be moved from an account abroad to several local accounts. Fernando and the prosecutor handling the case designed an operation. I had to accompany Rodrigo on that trip, get access to the transfer documents, and send them to the authorities in real time. It's risky, Fernando admitted, but it's our best chance. Risky was an understatement. If Rodrigo discovered what I was doing, I didn't know how he would react, but I also couldn't keep living like this. Trapped in a marriage of lies, with the threat of jail hanging over my head for crimes I had never consciously committed. I'll do it, I said, but I want one thing in return. What thing? Asked the prosecutor. I want to see his face when they arrest him. I want him to know it was me who destroyed him. The prosecutor nodded slowly. That can be arranged. The trip was scheduled for August 28th. A week before, Rodrigo surprised me with unexpected news. I want you to come with me, he told me one night during dinner, with that charming smile that now seemed like the mask of a monster. We haven't traveled together in a long time. It'll be like a second honeymoon. For a moment my blood ran cold. Did he suspect something? Was it a trap? But then I understood. Rodrigo needed me to be present to sign certain documents. As always, he would use me as a front. He had no idea that this time I had my own plans. I'd love to, I replied with my best loving wife smile. Where are we going? It's a surprise, he winked. The surprise, it turned out, was a trip to a coastal city in the south. Beautiful, picturesque, perfect for hiding million-dollar transactions under the guise of a romantic vacation. I packed my suitcase carefully. Besides clothes and toiletries, I had hidden a special phone that Fernando had given me. A phone impossible to trace, with an app that would let me send encrypted documents directly to the prosecutor. Remember, Fernando had told me before I left, we need the transfer documents. Photos, copies, anything. And we need Rodrigo to admit his involvement in a recorded conversation. Without that, the case isn't strong enough. I nodded, even though I was trembling inside. It was now or never. We arrived in the city on August 28th in the afternoon. The hotel was impressive, a restored colonial structure with ocean views, gardens full of tropical flowers, and service that treated Rodrigo like royalty. Do you come here often? I asked as we settled into the suite. From time to time, he replied evasively. For business. Business. Right. That first night Rodrigo was strangely affectionate. He took me to a fancy restaurant for dinner, bought me a pearl necklace as an apology for being so absent lately, said nice things to me that I hadn't heard in years. For a moment, I almost let myself be fooled. I almost forgot who the man sitting across from me really was. But then I saw his phone light up with a message. "D," said the contact. "Who is it?" I asked innocently. "No one important," he replied, quickly putting his phone away. "Do you want dessert?" No one important. His mistress, the mother of his child, the woman for whom he had betrayed me for years, no one important. That night, while Rodrigo slept, I slipped into the bathroom with his phone. He had changed the password, but after months of observing him, I knew all his patterns. His son, with Diana's birth date. Predictable to the end, what I found confirmed everything I suspected. Messages with his partners, talking about Saturday's transfer. Emails with attached documents detailing the movement of funds. Conversations about cleaning the money before it reached the final accounts. I took pictures of everything. Absolutely everything. And I sent them to Fernando that same early morning. Saturday arrived with a radiant sun that contrasted brutally with the darkness of what was about to happen. Rodrigo had a business meeting scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. He asked me to accompany him. "I need you to sign some documents," he explained, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Routine stuff. Routine stuff, like making me an accomplice to money laundering. But this time, I was prepared. We arrived at a discreet office in the city center. There were 3 other men waiting, all in expensive suits with shark-like expressions. They looked at me as if I were a piece of furniture, which suited me perfectly. "Sign here," Rodrigo instructed me, pointing to several documents. "What exactly am I signing?" I asked, discreetly activating the recording on my hidden phone. Rodrigo sighed impatiently. "You know how this works, Valentina. They're corporate documents. Nothing you should worry about. It's just that lately I've been thinking. I continued with an innocent voice, with all this divorce business and everything, could these documents affect me legally if something goes wrong? The other men exchanged nervous glances. Rodrigo paled. What divorce are you talking about? Ours, my love. I smiled sweetly. Or did you think I didn't know about Diana? The silence that followed was deafening. Valentina, Rodrigo's voice became dangerously low. This is not the time or place for this. Then, when is the time? I asked, standing up. When you use me once more as your legal front. When you make me an accomplice to another one of your dirty deals. Sit down and shut up, Rodrigo finally shouted, losing his composure. Or what? Are you going to threaten me like last time? Are you going to remind me that we both go down? One of the men stood up abruptly. Rodrigo, what the hell is going on here? Does your wife know? She doesn't know anything, Rodrigo interrupted furiously. She's crazy. She's been paranoid for months. I'm not crazy, I said, taking my phone out of my purse. But I am recording everything. And yes, I already sent all the documents I found on your phone to the authorities. The emails, the account numbers, all of your names. What happened next was chaos. The men started shouting, blaming each other, looking for an exit. Rodrigo lunged at me, trying to take my phone, but I was faster. I ran as I had never run in my life, down the stairs of the building at full speed, with my heart in my throat and the sound of footsteps chasing me. I burst onto the street and hailed the first taxi I saw. Take me downtown, quick, I yelled as I got in. The taxi driver, a man about 50 years old with a graying mustache, looked at me in the rearview mirror with a worried expression. Are you okay, ma'am? Just drive, please, fast. He took off just as Rodrigo came out of the building, looking for me frantically. We hadn't gone 3 blocks when the sirens started. At first I thought it was the police coming to help me. The agents Fernando had coordinated for the operation. But something was wrong. The patrol cars weren't coming from just one direction. They were surrounding us. The taxi driver slammed on the brakes. What's going on? I murmured as I watched 3 patrol cars block our way. Turn off the engine and get out of the vehicle, ordered a voice through a megaphone. The taxi driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. His eyes, which had shown concern before, now shone with something different. Ma'am, he said in a low but firm voice, I don't know what you're involved in, but trust me, don't get out of the taxi. What? Why? Don't get out of here. Trust me, he repeated urgently, as more patrol cars arrived. Those aren't real police. Well, some are, but they're on the take. Your husband has contacts on the force. If they get you now, you won't make it to testify alive. I froze. How do you know that? How do you know who I am? The taxi driver showed me a badge he took from his glove compartment. I'm Agent Ramirez. I work undercover for the anti-corruption unit. I've been following your husband and his police contacts for months. Fernando assigned me to protect you. Fernando. My lawyer's name sounded unreal in that context, but it also meant hope. What do we do then? I asked, as the police approached the taxi with their weapons drawn. Ramirez activated something on his phone. Now I called for backup, the real ones. What followed were the longest 15 minutes of my life. The uniformed men surrounded the taxi, shouting orders. Ramirez kept the doors locked, refusing to obey while repeating that we were undercover agents in a classified operation. There was a moment, a terrible moment, when one of them aimed directly at my window. I saw his finger on the trigger. I saw the coldness in his eyes, and I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that he was willing to shoot me if his boss ordered it. But then they arrived. Black unmarked vans appeared from every direction. Men and women in plain clothes, but wearing bulletproof vests, jumped from the vehicles, weapons in hand, shouting that they were from the federal prosecutor's office. The situation spiraled out of control. The corrupt police tried to flee, but were quickly subdued. There were shouts, scuffles, a few shots fired into the air, and me, in the middle of it all, trembling in the back seat of a taxi, while the world exploded around me. When they finally opened the taxi door, the face that greeted me was Fernando's. "Are you okay?" he asked, helping me out. I couldn't answer. I just nodded as tears streamed down my cheeks. "We got him," Fernando told me, with a half smile. "All of them thanks to you." Rodrigo was arrested that same afternoon, along with his partners and several corrupt police officers who had been helping him operate for years. Diana was also detained, though her involvement turned out to be less than we thought. She had simply been another victim of his lies, convinced the money was legal, and that Rodrigo was really going to leave me for her. The trial lasted almost a year. I had to testify multiple times, face Rodrigo in the courtroom, relive every lie, every betrayal, every moment I had felt small and insignificant. But I did it. I did it because I needed to close that chapter of my life, and because I needed to see his face when the judge read the sentence. 22 years in prison. 22 years for money laundering, fraud, criminal association, and other crimes I didn't even know existed. When he heard the sentence, Rodrigo looked at me. There was no charm left in his eyes, no manipulation, no threats, just pure hatred. "This isn't over," he shouted, as the guards took him away. "You'll pay for this, Valentina. I swear you'll pay." But his shouts didn't affect me. Not anymore, because I understood something fundamental in that moment. Rodrigo no longer had any power over me. He never would again. 3 years have passed since then. I had to start from scratch. Literally. All of Rodrigo's assets were confiscated by the state as part of the process, including the house where we had lived together. But thanks to Fernando and the prosecutor, I was able to prove my innocence and didn't face any charges. I went back to live with my sister for a while I rebuilt my life. I got a new job at a small but honest company where no one knew my story. I started therapy to process all the trauma, and little by little, very slowly, I began to heal. Agent Ramirez, the taxi driver who saved my life that night, became a close friend. Retired after the operation, he now spends his time helping other victims of similar situations. He invited me to volunteer at an organization that supports women trapped in relationships with abusive or criminal men. That's where I found my purpose. Every time I help a woman get out of a situation like mine, I feel I give a little meaning to everything I lived through. I can't change my past, but I can use my experience to change other people's futures. Diana contacted me a few months ago. I didn't know how to react when I saw her message, so I ignored it for weeks. But finally, curiosity got the better of resentment. We met at a neutral cafe. She looked different, thinner, with deep dark circles, without the artificial glow I remembered from that New Year's party where I met her. "I wanted to apologize to you," she said, without preamble. "I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it." I looked at her in silence, waiting for her to continue. "Rodrigo lied to me about everything," she explained with a trembling voice. "He told me you were separated, that the marriage was just a legal front, that you knew about us and were okay with it." I was a fool to believe him. Yes, she was. But I had been a fool for years, too. Who was I to judge her? "How is the boy?" I finally asked, her eyes filled with tears. "He's fine. He lives with me, my parents help me. But he asks about his dad. I still don't know how to explain to him that his father is in prison for being a criminal." I didn't know how to respond to that. The situation was more complex than any apology could solve. "I don't hate you, Diana," I finally said. I was very angry. For a long time, but not anymore. We were both victims of the same person. The only difference is, you have a child with him. We said goodbye with an awkward but sincere hug. I don't know if we'll ever be friends. Probably not, but at least resentment no longer consumes me. Rodrigo's family never forgave me. Doña Carmen and Don Eduardo, who had once welcomed me as a daughter, now consider me the guilty one. In their version of events, I am the vengeful wife who destroyed their innocent son. I don't care. I've learned I can't control what others think of me. I can only control my actions and live with the truth. And the truth is, I did the right thing. Maybe not in the cleanest or simplest way, but I did it. My parents, on the other hand, have been my rock. My mother cried when I told her everything that had happened, and my father hugged me like he hadn't. since I was a little girl, and whispered, "I'm proud of you, Mija. You were braver than I would have been." Those words meant more to me than any court sentence. I recently met someone. His name is Andres. He's an engineer. He has a contagious laugh and the adorable habit of bringing me coffee exactly how I like it without me having to ask. At first I was scared. After everything I lived through with Rodrigo, the idea of trusting another man seemed impossible. But Andres has been patient. He doesn't pressure me, doesn't manipulate me, doesn't make me feel crazy for having doubts. "Take all the time you need," he told me when I told him my story. "I'm not going anywhere." And for the first time in a long time, I believe him. I don't know if we're going to work out. I don't know if I'll ever be able to give myself completely to another relationship, but I'm willing to try. Because I deserve to be happy. Because I deserve to be truly loved. Because I deserve so much more than Rodrigo ever gave me. If you're listening to this story, and something about it sounds familiar, if you're in a relationship where you feel something isn't right, where you're made to doubt your own sanity, where you feel trapped with no way out, I want you to know something. There is a way out. There is always a way out. You might not see it now. You might feel alone, like no one will believe you, like you don't have resources or support. But I promise you, there are people willing to help. Organizations, lawyers, support groups, family members who love you, even if they don't show it. You don't have to stay. You don't have to put up with it. You don't have to be an accomplice to someone who destroys you. I learned it the hard way, that night in the back seat of a taxi, surrounded by corrupt police officers, fearing for my life. But I learned it. And I moved forward. You can too. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I think about that night, about Agent Ramirez's voice telling me trust me, about the feeling of absolute terror when I saw the gun pointed at my window, about the indescribable relief when backup arrived. And I think about all the little decisions that led me to that point. The moment I decided to investigate on my own, the night I told my sister everything, the day I agreed to cooperate with the authorities, even though I was terrified. Any one of those decisions could have gone wrong. I could have been discovered, hurt, silenced, but I also could have kept quiet. I could have kept signing documents, being an accomplice, living a lie until the lie destroyed me. I chose to fight, and that choice saved my life. Rodrigo has 18 more years left on his sentence. 18 years in which he won't be able to lie, manipulate, or destroy anyone else. Sometimes, I wonder if he thinks about me, if he hates me as much as he promised, if he'll ever regret what he did. But the truth is, I don't care anymore. Rodrigo no longer occupies space in my mind or my heart. What remains of him are just scars that are slowly healing, lessons that made me stronger, stories I tell to help others. My life no longer belongs to him. My life, for the first time in years, is completely mine. Today I woke up early, drank coffee watching the sunrise from my small apartment, and smiled for no particular reason. Because I'm alive. Because I'm free. Because against all odds, I made it. And that, after everything I went through, is more than enough. If you or someone you know is in an abusive or manipulative situation, don't be afraid to seek help. You are not alone. You are never alone. And remember, your story doesn't end where others decide. You write your own story. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've made it this far, if something in my words resonated with you, leave me a comment. I'd love to know I'm not the only one who has been through something like this. And if you need to talk, I'm here. Always here.